A big part to being a modern action figure collector is wanting to know what's coming in the future. Some of it is wanting to predict it, some of it is wanting to know for sure, maybe through access to undisclosed information like leaks or images that weren't supposed to show up online. Or maybe you've gotten together with some of your friends and formed a tight-knit secret group to break into toy companies and steal information. And yeah, that probably didn't happen unless it was a Rick and Morty episode I missed. The point is, really the only way to be able to predict what's coming out is to use what I call balance of probability. Well, it's not what I call it. I mean, it exists. It's existed for years. It's from Sherlock Holmes. It's one of my favorite quotes. And it's something that, as a active toy fan, I've been doing with Star Wars, for example, for decades. And basically, the idea is looking at what is coming out and using that to extrapolate what could be coming out. So, basic figures, you know you're going to get more basic figures. If you see Figure and Beast or Figure and Rider packs, it's a good chance you may get more Figure and Rider packs. As an example, when the Gunner Stations came out in Power of the Force 2, there was a very good chance that we might get more Gunner Stations. Yeah, we only got one more, but it fell within a balance of probability that we might get things like a Death Star gun, or maybe even Admiral Akbar and his swivel chair gunner station of doom. Okay, well, it wasn't as much of a gunner station, but it kind of fit in with that whole action figure in a chair thing. It's one of the games that action figure collectors play. I'm sure I'm not the only one who does this. But recently, I've been thinking a lot about the vintage collection as we're all waiting and waiting for Kenner/Hasbro to finally finish the 96, right? All 96 original carded figures. And people have had different ways of getting to that 96. How exactly do we do the math? I've done a few videos on it myself on this channel. You can see one linked here. But you're basically talking about those 96 carded, and then the R2-D2 variants, and the C-3PO variant. And wait, let me see, did I do that math right?
There are no more bullets left in that gun.
Oh, come on, you don't think I'm gonna fall for that old trick?
It's not a trick. There was one shot at Mr. Body in the study, 2 for the chandelier, 2 at the lounge door, and 1 for the singing telegram.
That's not 6.
1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1.
Right, Yak Face. We have to not forget Yak Face. Of course, he was a carded figure.
There was only one shot that got the chandelier. That's 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1.
Even if you were right, that would be 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1.
Okay, so while things like this are not counted, unfortunately, as part of the 96, which is a shame because they really should be, or things like this, again, an R2-D2 with a third leg, because they didn't come out on a carded single card, that tends to be the cutoff point. All right, so back to the vintage collection and wanting them being Hasbro, to finish the 96, which they've said they want to do. It's been part of their ad slogan for the past 2-3 years, saying that their goal is to finish the 96. And they've been doing an admirable job, especially of getting out figures that needed to be released on those cards. But what's interesting, it's not only single-carded figures that help with this. There's other sort of avenues of distribution. One of them, for example, are carded figures that have come with playsets, or playset diorama backdrop sections, if you will, like the Tanaviv walls. So if we were going to get a figure, for example, like FX7 on a vintage card, which we have not gotten, so he's not part of the vintage series, we do have this figure. It's been released, and we have sort of a modern, really good version of him. Granted, now it's like 20 plus years old, but it holds up really well. But we haven't actually gotten it on a vintage card. We've gotten it as part of a vintage card 3-pack that was at Target a few years back with an even better paint job. It was a recreation of this vintage 3-pack. But the point is, it's still not part of the 96. So FX7 could be released on a single card, right? Now, there is another way that we're getting vintage figures released now, and that is through army building. And I know you're saying, well, wait a minute. They've been doing army building for years. By army building, I mean specifically the army building being done on Hasbro Pulse, where you can now order sets of multiple figures in the same theme, i.e. Stormtroopers, i.e. Tanaviv 4 soldiers, Rebel Fleet soldiers, and it's a great way to get more characters out, and it falls into the vintage series. This pack in particular is pretty awesome because not only are you getting Rebel Fleet troopers, but you're also getting Captain Antilles. It's the same mold, but it's repainted. And most importantly, all of these figures have unique heads, brand new sculpts, which is incredibly important because we're not just taking an existing figure and updating it with a new paint job. We're actually improving the figure and turning it into a screen-accurate character. Although some of the versions of this figure have been less screen-accurate over the years. We could debate about that. The point being is that these multi-packs are a way of getting out vintage-style figures that can help complete the 96. And this, if you will, much like those gunner stations as an example, is an avenue, if I believe, used correctly, could help to complete the vintage collection. And so let me explain a little bit how that could potentially happen. So, looking at some of the most notorious holdouts from the vintage line that are not in the modern line. One of them is the Bespin Wing Guards, right? Lando and his, little blue guard people of doom. Not those ones, these ones. Well, actually, same ones, but, we're talking about the Kenner ones, right? Kenner had two different versions. They had a Caucasian and an African American. Now, the Caucasian had a mustache, a handlebar mustache, although the image on the card, he had a full beard. So there's always been debate about who this is supposed to represent. The African American, on the other hand, well, clearly an African American character. We've had several versions in the modern line, but they've all been a little bit, well, wonky is sometimes a kind word, but we really haven't had truly definitive versions of the Bespin Wing Guards. Even the African American version, well, if you look closely, that's a Caucasian guy whose head is just repainted African American. He does not have African American facial features the way the vintage African American wing guard, I said field guard, wing guard had. That was clearly an African American actor. So, looking at the two that were released in the vintage line, they really haven't been done in the modern line correctly. And, it would be a great way to get not only all of them out, bearded, mustached, African American, using an African American face sculpt. All of them could come together in one of these troop builders. Throw in Lobot or throw in Lando for funsies as the leader, like they did with Captain Antilles. Or what about the Imperial dignitaries? This is one of the other huge holdouts from the vintage line. In fact, we have never gotten the main Imperial dignitary Sloom Alu in the modern line, ever, period. There's one in existence, this one. Well, I don't mean like one figure was made. I mean, the characters only ever had one action figure, the vintage one. We've never had a modern one from Power of the Force 2 up till now. So, could this also work in the army builder distribution system, if you will? Well, we have had some Imperial dignitaries offered in the past, and this is usually what Hasbro has leaned on for the past decade or so, saying the character is done and crossed off because they made these figures in the Saga line, but these are not Slim Alu. These are other Imperial dignitaries. So this didn't really check off the box for most collectors. In fact, almost no collectors considered this an update of the vintage figure. It was considered additional figures that we got, additional Imperial dignitaries. So what if you took the Imperial dignitaries that we did get already, and then throw in some new Imperial dignitaries, make one of them Slim Alu? I mean, you've got plenty to choose from, and there's plenty of different colors and styles and hats and all of that fun. And that could also be an army builder. Heck, throw in Emperor Palpatine in a walking facial sculpt, if you will. We've had angry, lightning facial sculpt, and we've had sitting facial sculpt, well, give him a walking facial sculpt on that new body from figure 200. And this could be a way to army build your Imperial dignitaries and finally get Slim Aloo as a vintage series scale articulated figure. Throw some updated paint on the previous two Imperial dignitaries from 15, 20 years ago. Give them a photo real face look and some fresh paint. Could be a really nice looking set. And now you could use these Army Builder pack sets. They now become these vehicles to complete characters that we've never been able to get to finish the vintage line. It's a little bit wonky, and it may not mean getting them on a single card release, but at least we would get them in compatible with the vintage series in terms of articulation, in terms of paint, etc., and most importantly in terms of character selection, that we could finally get those characters we've been waiting for. Army Builder packs that are now part of the template of release structure could be used to do other things too, like Endor Troopers. We could finally get that Kenner version. The last time was in Power of the Force 2, and there's so many different versions of the Endor Trooper that we technically haven't gotten. I don't know. It's an idea. I'm just throwing it out there, but could Hasbro run with it? Yeah, it could be an idea they could run with, because one thing that is consistent over the years is we only get what follows the template of what's already coming out. And with the establishment of these Army Builder packs, we now have a new template for distribution of 3 3/4 vintage scale size Star Wars figures. So why not take advantage of that and use it as a vehicle to complete the vintage line? That's my proposal. What do you think? What other characters do you think would work well as part of the troop builders that could also help complete the vintage line? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.